it'll grow by that amount, which is great because it'll keep your database and everything from stopping, and all processing will continue. But it's bad in the sense that it happens when it needs to, which is usually like in the busiest part of the day, when you don't want an auto grow to kick in because it is resource intensive. It's better to go ahead and manually set your transaction log to a certain size, anticipating any future growth, and you control when the growth happens, which would hopefully be in a change window or when the system's not real busy. There are some customers and people that think that the transaction log needs to stay small, and they will create a job in their maintenance plan that auto shrinks, or that will shrink it every night as small as it will go. And this is a bad idea because you shrink it and then it's going to grow throughout the day. And then at night, your maintenance job will kick in and shrink it, and then it'll grow throughout the day. So what's the point exactly? Just leave it at its size it needs to be, and don't do all that extra disk I/O, right, of shrinking and growing. Also, when it grows by a small amount, I think by default it's 1 meg for, let's see, database files. No. Well, maybe I changed mine. I don't know. I thought it was. Oh, that's on 2016. Let's look at 2012.
Yeah, for mine, it's showing initial is 8 and auto grows. What version? 2016.
Okay. That's more like what I'm used to seeing. So 2012, the default was to auto grow by, for the database file, by 1 meg, and for the transaction log by 10%. Now, typically when you need to auto grow, you're going to auto grow by 1 meg. You're probably going to need more space later on in the day, depending on how many transactions are coming in. So every time it does auto grow, it creates virtual log files inside the transaction log. And too many virtual log files will cause your recovery to go slow, your restore to go slow. It can affect database mirroring. It can affect always-on availability groups, replication. The most virtual log files I've ever seen a customer have is a little over 1 million. That's a lot. And they had to restart their SQL Server, and after 2 hours their databases were still not online. And that's because they had all these virtual log files. The only thing you can do in that situation is wait. You just have to wait until it recovers. So they don't like to hear that, but that's just the way it is. Yes, I'm recording, sorry. Oops. Now your database file, it will auto grow too. It doesn't have virtual log files, but you want to set this to something larger than 1 meg and 10%. With the transaction log, you want to set it to a set amount of megabytes. Something large enough that you're not going to have auto grow kick in frequently, but not so large that it takes a long time for it to grab that space. If you have a bunch of auto grows, you could be fragmenting the file underneath there on the disk. Also, for the transaction log, let's say that an oops happens, right? You do a very large bulk insert and you didn't turn your recovery model to bulk. And now you have this huge transaction log of 300 gig, and your database is only 100 gig. And you're about to run out of disk space. What do? Well, you can shrink it, but it should be like a one-off kind of thing. So you can shrink it down. Now, the same kind of thing can happen to the main database file, where over time you've been neglectful, you weren't paying attention, your database has ballooned into this huge size, and you're about to run out of disk space. Maybe you go through and you do a big purge, right? You purge a bunch of data out of your database to free up some space. And of course, that does nothing. It still takes up the same amount of disk space it did before. We have to shrink it in order to release that space back to the operating system. You want to resist the urge whenever possible of shrinking the MDF. Can anybody guess maybe why that would be a bad idea?
And aside from the same kind of things you said for the transaction log, where it's a resource-intensive type of situation, and you don't necessarily also want it to try to be growing throughout the day during business times.
True. But let's say you want to shrink it. It's 300 gig now. You want to shrink your database file down to 200 gig, and you're still leaving about 50 gig of room that way. Why would that still be a bad idea?
When you shrink, is the data accessible?
Yes, you can still use and get to the data in the database, yes.
Would it mess up like indexing or anything like that?
Yes. Why did you ask? What made you think of that? You've heard this spiel before?
No, I don't think so.
No? Okay, cool. That's very good. Why would it be bad for your indexing?
Indexing is kind of like, I don't know, the way I was kind of looking at it, I could just be wrong, I just got lucky, but I was thinking of indexing of like, you're setting like direct paths to like, objects that are related, I guess, so it queries faster. And if you're shrinking your database, it's going to mess up those paths at some point.
Would it change the pages
Yeah.
that things are written on?
It reorganizes the pages. So if you have your clustered index points to the pages, right? Points to the actual data pages where the data is stored. And when you go to shrink, it has to reorganize it, kind of like defragmenting a hard drive. It has to move the data around. So your indexes, all of them, become badly fragmented. Okay? What do you do to fix a badly fragmented index? Update statistics for a fragmented index? Rebuild them, reorganize.
Now, if they're only a little bit, it would be reorganized. If they're a lot, it would be rebuilt.
Right. So if they're a little bit fragmented, you can reorganize. But from my understanding, this, shrinking the data file badly fragments the indexes. So you'd have to rebuild them. When you rebuild a clustered index, what happens behind the scenes as far as database space? Do you know?
Temporarily use part of that's not used. Stick around.
It needs extra space.
It basically makes a copy of that data. So if the table you're indexing is a gig, it's going to need another gig's worth of space in order to create that clustered index. And if you've just shrunk it, what's going to happen?
It's going to re-expand again.
It's going to re-expand it again. So it's kind of an exercise in futility. I mean, you can realize some space because you're only rebuilding an index at a time. So you'd rebuild your largest index first. But yeah, it's going to turn around and probably auto-grow. So kind of what's the, right? A lot of disk activity for, probably not a lot of gain. But just go ahead and leave it that size if you can afford the disk space. And eventually, over time, your database will grow and use it. It doesn't hurt performance to have a big database file. That's not what's a performance thing. It's more the queries and how your data is structured inside of it that affects performance. So, and if I ever say anything wrong, Todd, please jump in.
Write it down.
Okay.
Tough crowd.
Huh?
Yeah, tough audience.
Yeah. Da da da. Psh. So that's all I had to talk about with the transaction log. Then I thought, well, we had gone over the PowerPoint I have for performance troubleshooting using PSSDiag. And we had to end on this slide. So this was things you need to know before you go to run PSSDiag. Number one, if you just go with all the defaults when you create a PSSDiag, it's going to use the Windows authentication by default. If you have a customer that needs to use SQL authentication, you can just indicate that on the configuration of PSSDiag, and then it'll prompt them for the password when they go to run it. Whoever logs in and goes to run PSSDiag, they need to be a sysadmin on the SQL instance, of course. They need to be a member of administrators. Yeah, they need to be able to log in to SQL. They got to have that kind of permission, or it's not going to work. If your customer has a clustered SQL instance, then you need to replace the period in the name, SQL Server name, with the actual SQL network name. You know, that virtual network name that Todd talked about last week. And you need to replace the asterisk, which is by default in the instance field, with the actual instance name if you're running it against a named instance. Whoops. Okay, that's it for that. Now, as far as it being a resource hit, the PSSDiag itself is not that much of a resource hit. The collectors are very efficient. The expensive part of a PSSDiag is the trace. Now, with the new PSSDiag that we have, which runs on 2014 and higher, I think.
The newest version of the, I think it'll still get 2012.
Will it get?
I think so.
Okay. I know it won't work, the default one won't work on 2008 R2 or 2008 because the default collector for the new PSSDiag uses extended events only, and extended events in a very limited form came out in 2008 R2. So just kind of keep that in mind. The profiler trace is what's expensive. You need to make sure your customer selects their output folder carefully. You don't want to have your PSSDiag collect on the same folder or drive that has your tempDB or that has your transaction logs. And you can't have it go to a network drive. That would be very bad. And don't capture more than you need. If you or your customer is not comfortable, they're not sure if this PSSDiag, because think about it, you're going to run PSSDiag on a server that's already suffering from performance issues, and you're adding something else that's going to consume resources. So test, right? Maybe after hours, maybe against their test server, and they can open up Task Manager and they can kick it off and they can see, okay, how much resources does it consume, and get an idea and feel better about it.
Do you guys have are we telling people what they should default to as far as the general perf as opposed to the detail?
Yeah, that was earlier in the presentation before. I think you missed that presentation.
Fall asleep. But what do we tell people? Because I hear there's the two clubs of get all of it versus just get.
I'm in the club of run the general PSSDiag because I've brought down
You're
Miami.
the
Yeah, I brought down TV services in Miami one day.
one. And that's PFE. I had a lot of cases open because the engineer just was like, "Oh, we'll get it all," and they used a detail.
Yeah, detailed is really, really resource intensive. So I use extreme caution before I run a detailed PSSDiag. It's going to generate a lot of data very quickly, and it is a big hit to resources, okay? I mean, CPU is going to be really high. Plus, I find it's harder for me to read and analyze it because,
It's overwhelming.
yeah. It is going to put out a lot of data, even the general one, so make sure whatever drive you run it on has at least 5 gigs of free space. And yeah, no kitchen sink, okay? So PSSDiag, you can't blame it if you run it at a customer site and you bring them down or something bad happens. No, you configured it, okay? And the ultimate responsibility is going to be on you. So be careful. Don't just, oh yeah, run detailed for 30 minutes or an hour. No, that's not a good idea.
Over the weekend.
Over the weekend. Oh my God. That'd be really bad. Now, performance issues aren't always occurring right then. They don't necessarily happen at a convenient time. So there are ways to schedule PSSDiag. There are switches that you can use, like the top one there. So you say PSSDiag/B, that means begin. So it's going to begin at 2 in the afternoon. If 2 in the afternoon has already passed for today, then it will start at 2 p.m. in the afternoon tomorrow. The second one means I want you to start PSSDiag right now, and I want you to end 2 hours from now. The next one is begin at 8 a.m. today. If 8 a.m. is already passed, it'll start at 8 a.m. tomorrow, and I want you to end 9 hours later. Please don't ever run it for 9 hours. But anyway, the last one is start right now. I want you to end at 2 a.m. and I want you to restart and overwrite the output.
Is this the customer put it to this here once they run? The customer's doing this part.
Yeah.
This is if they're running it when they run it from the command line.
Yes.
What's the /L and /U?
It means restart and overwrite the output. I don't know what the L, what that means, like to associate it with something. I don't know why.
The L is the restarting part, and Q is like quiet, where it doesn't ask the questions about do you want to overwrite this or not. It's just
Yeah.
do it.
But why they picked L, I don't know.
Why would you want
So there is a way to have it use rolling trace files. So you say only retain 12 trace files, for example. So it will delete the oldest trace file as it creates the newest trace file. So you kind of got this rolling set. That way you don't have too much output. And if you want it to restart every day, just so you don't have this huge perf stat script output, you don't have tons of VLG files, you just have it restart every day. Because sometimes they say, yeah, I don't know, usually we have this performance issue just out of the blue every 3 days or so. You know, well, crap, how are we going to catch that?
So it's like start now, end at 2 a.m. and then after ending, do you restart?
Yes, it'll restart automatically.
And then it will start then and again end at 2.
Yes.
And do these count in the number of times they are allowed to run the PSSDiag? We specify a number, right?
That's two different, yeah.
That's SDP.
That's a different diagnostic collector. Yeah. You can register PSSDiag as a service, because guess what? You go to the server, you open a command prompt, you kick off PSSDiag, and if you log off, PSSDiag stops. Okay? And some customers have, a corporate policy or whatever that says we have to log off all machines. We can't stay logged on. So you can register PSSDiag as a service and run it that way so they can log off and be in compliance with their bosses, because everybody wants to be in compliance with their bosses. So if you need to run it for extended periods, run as a service, so logout doesn't stop the collection. The profiler traces dominate the output size. The trace files must always be collected on the server. Like I said, you cannot send it to a network drive. It'd be very bad. And you can enable the delete old trace file so that you have that rolling set. The only catch with that is the customer needs to have some alerting system or something in place so that they know when the issue happens, so they can get to the server and stop the collection. Because you only have so much time before those trace files are going to roll over and you'll lose the event.
Now, as far as the fails must be collected on the server itself, don't use network drive, is that simply because of the amount of bandwidth it's going to consume?
Yes, the amount of data
or is there something else?
the amount of data it's pumping out, yes.
So if they had a situation where their network drives could handle that throughput,
I wouldn't do it.
so
Nope.
Can you use multiple switches, like a begin time and then end time and
Yes.
then a restart and overwrite
Yes.
all in the same thing?
Yes.
So if I wanted it to run like between 9 a.m. and 2 p.m., Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, and then I'll come back and finish it up after that, I can do that?
Yes.
Cool.
Yes.
Don't do that.
What? You could.
How do I do all those things? You're on your own when you get the data.
Let's see. What else can we talk about? Let's see if anybody has any questions about performance, or I have enough windows open. Yeah. I'll get down here somewhere. No. I'm always running out of disk space.
it says drive.
Huh? I have a 256 gigabyte SSD. That could be part of the problem, yes. All right. No questions from the floor. Or from the phone, I'm sorry.
I have a question, and I'm sorry if you covered it all already. I'm still working on multitasking. So, say a person, their LDF file, their transaction log has become bloated, and their backups fail when they try to back that up. I was under the impression that we always want to have a good backup before we try to shrink those. Is there any danger in shrinking a transaction log for without a good backup?
Well, I guess there's always danger, but
Danger.
the simple thing would be to change it to simple recovery mode. Now, granted that you're going to lose the transaction log, but hopefully your database is in a good spot at that moment. So the window of risk is pretty small. So you would change the recovery model to simple. That will truncate the transaction log. Then switch your recovery mode back to full and do a full backup right then.
Okay.
And then shrink the transaction log. Probably be the way I'd do it.
Yeah, I was just curious. I'll always refer to your team when it's an actual customer because you're the SQL experts. But I was just curious about that because that came up today, and thank you.
Todd's over here pointing at himself going, what, us? Like shaking his head. Like, no way. All right.
You did bring up a good point that the topic of simple versus full. So a lot of customers will get confused. Well, they'll switch their transaction log to simple, and they'll call in and say, my transaction log is still growing. I switched it to simple. Why is it doing that? So if you don't know about the simple and full, Simple just means it will automatically truncate the log after each transaction commits, but we're still logging everything. So even in simple, if you have a huge long-running transaction that's changing a million rows and we're having to log all of those, your log can still grow in simple mode.
Yes.
That's all I got.
Especially if you have replication or anything like that. Well, you can't have replication when you're in simple mode. But what will stop open transaction? We'll keep it from truncating.
Open transaction, then if it is full, replication can. So the transaction is committed and you've done a backup and you thought maybe everything would have been removed from the log. But if one of the subscribers hasn't gotten that data yet in a replication scenario, then there are these little bits or whatever on the page that determines if it's been committed or not, and there's one that gets added for, do all my subscribers have the copy of it? If they don't, those won't be truncated. That was Chris, the lady that had I think that was them, that had the issue where, what was her issue? Yeah, when they were running out of log space.
Mm-hmm.
The first, when they were first getting the errors basically pointed to there was an active transaction going on, and that's why we couldn't shrink the log.
Mm-hmm.
Later on, they got errors about replication was stopping the log from shrinking, and that was why one of their subscribers, probably their whole big problem that took forever to recover, made the replication guys get behind. So once the database did come up an hour or two later, whatever it was, replication then almost took it down also.
Gotcha.
So if you want to find out what's holding up my transaction log from getting cleared out, you can go to select star from sys databases, and there's a column there, log reuse weight description, and then there's this code. But this is where it will tell you, what's holding up the log from being reused. There's like their active transaction right here. There's an active transaction that's preventing it. Log backup, those will usually go away. But it'll say just plain as day replication in there. So how many of y'all have actually gone through and done the homework and got your AdventureWorks database and created a table with a collection, your collection of music or your books or movies? Anybody?
You just making like test databases?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, I have.
You have?
Mm-hmm.
Who was that spoke?
This is Ernest. Ernest
Hi,
Tail.
Ernest. Excellent. So I'm trying to come up with an exercise we can do with this database and table that we've created. I haven't come up with one yet, but I wanted to see how many people had actually done it before I spent a lot of energy trying to come up with something.
Have all you guys gotten the, was it like a knowledge check thing that you ran, and or
Yeah.
when did you give them the homework? I'm not sure who all was here or not here.
The homework was given when they expressed interest in coming, so I gave it to them then. Coming to class.
I think I maybe made some of them sign up and they didn't express interest, so they might not have gotten.
Oh, okay.
I didn't do any homework, but I will.
I'm sorry, Melissa, what was that?
I said I didn't do any homework, but I will. I missed that. I got to go back and look in my emails for that memo. I'm sorry.
Oh, maybe I missed you.
Can you send it to us?
It's
Sure.
probably there. I'll double check. I'm sorry.
Well, we did the knowledge base.
I remember getting like there was the two knowledge, like the two tests
Yeah.
kind of thing that we took.
Yeah.
I did that. I just don't remember.
Yeah, I did all that. I have AdventureWorks, all that stuff. I mean, I've created databases before, but I didn't know that was supposed to.
Yeah, this is more
Supposed
like
to
this is
create
more, I guess,
all
like
that stuff.
blog stuff. Is that what that would be?
What's that?
Uh, blogger.
binary, large.
Binary large object.
Blob. Blob storage.
No, we weren't going to go that far, dude. We weren't going to get that
So
complicated
I
yet.
already have a bunch of a database, but what did you want to know?
To create a table in the database, and you know, just to get you to think about how would I structure my table if I'm going to be putting in a music collection or like a library, a collection of all my books, the titles, the authors. Would you use genres? Just how you'd organize that, and the different columns, right? And the exercises to get you to thinking about normalization. You start to notice as you're putting the data in there, I'm repeating stuff, right? I'm repeating some data. I don't want to repeat data. You know, do I need to make two tables instead and have a table that's just all about authors, you know, a table of authors, and then because you might have books that, you know, several books with the same author, that kind of stuff, just to get you to think about that.
So you want a brand new database for that, right?
Oh, you can use AdventureWorks. Yeah. Just add another table to it. And plus, it's to get you actually doing hands-on stuff. As you can listen to me all day long, and it can make sense in your mind. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, yeah. But then you go to actually do it, and you lock up, right?
So I have a question, and it might be a silly question, but all the
There's a $5 penalty for silly questions.
Straight to Todd though, and then
Yeah.
do some more table.
The normalization stuff, that's all manual, or is there something automatic? Like I can select some columns and I say create new table, and it will go and create a new table for me, and then have some foreign key or something pointing to the old table. It doesn't do that, or is it all just manually? I'll have to create a new table and move all the data from one to the other. And I don't know if it's there. It might be.
So I don't know if y'all heard the question. Did y'all hear the question?
Language.
I have the question.
English.
I was asking the folks on
We're in the same
the
room, so.
phone. So the question was, is there something that automatically happens when you go to create these tables, and maybe you realize you want to move some stuff to another table and have foreign keys and all this? No, you've got to do it. Unless you write scripts that are going to do that for you automatically.
So when people have huge databases,
Yes.
how do they do it? I mean, it takes so many man hours to do all that normalization stuff.
That's why they have to do that.
That's why developers make good money.
That goes into like when you first design the database, right?
Right.
You have to have an understanding of what this database can be used for, what its purpose is,
Yes.
and then how to best order all the data within it.
Yes.
And somebody doesn't necessarily like, if you're talking about, if you've got a table with 1 million rows and you want to split some of that data into 2 different tables, you can just write a select statement that inserts over here. I never can remember if it's the select insert or the insert select. One of them actually creates a table for you based on your select, and the other one, the table has to exist first. I always have to look it up. I don't remember.
Yeah. So you can do something like that. Or if you just wanted to partition, you can partition. And there's example scripts on how to,
splitting up the data.
automatically partition and things like that. But yeah, you pretty much gotta, for your initial database and your initial structure, that's you. Or a team of people, right? Yeah. What homework are we talking about? I'll send it back out again so that y'all have that. I haven't done it yet, so I know it's so bad.
I can't keep up with. I think the calendar. Like if I forwarded the calendar event invite to other people, does it update your calendar?
I think it does.
Okay.
I think it does. So we don't have much time left, but we should learn something, right? We've already talked about deadlocking. This is PSSDiag. So here's a lab for y'all to do. Here's some homework. Go find PSSDiag. So what do we need? We need SQL installed on our computer. We need the RML utilities. We need SQL Nexus and PSSDiag. I can send you all the PowerPoint, not that one, this PowerPoint, and all that's listed in the slides. So go out and find it, install it, and capture a PSSDiag of your SQL Server. Load the output into SQL Nexus and look at it. Yeah. Huh? You did that this week. But
I did it last week.
Well, I did it last week.
You did it last year.
What's the
Last decade.
HOFCPU document?
That is a document that I have somewhere for when I teach this class. Like, yeah, for me to do a demo. Yeah. How would you simulate a high CPU situation in PSSDiag? I mean, on your SQL Server.
Yeah,
You can use O-stress. Yes, I know the folks on the phone are probably going, O-stress, what's that? Bing it.
They stole that from Bob.
Yeah.
Well,
What's another way? Let's say you don't have O-stress, or you've never heard of it, so you don't even know to look for it. What's another way you can simulate a high CPU situation on SQL Server?
Some sort of looping mathematical calculation.
A looping mathematical calculation. Again, bing, bing, bing. He remembered the meeting with Bob. Yay! Yeah, so math consumes only CPU, and you can do it in such a way that it'll chew up all your CPU. Let me go ahead and send this PowerPoint to you guys so I don't forget. I can attach it to the meeting. That's what I'll do.
Thank you, Stacy.
Uh-huh.
Have a good weekend.
Bye.